Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Coach Alex Leech joining us here today live on the podcast and Zoomcast. We are excited to have her here from Alex Lee Consulting. She's a neurodiversity coach as well as consultant and advocate, and we are honored to have her here today from Toronto, Canada. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Jill, how are you?
I'm doing well. Pleasure to get to see you here in person and get to speak with you today. I'm excited to talk about the work you're doing. Please tell us first and foremost your website.
My website is www.alexleech.ca. There's never a
Perfect.
guess of who you're getting in touch with my handle.
Exactly. Well,
Yes.
tell us about your practice.
So I am a neurodiversity specialist. I'm a consultant, coach, and advocate, and I work with primarily parents, but parents and families that are raising tweens, teens, and young adults who are neurodistinct, whether that is they have autism, ADHD, dyslexia, any other learning disability, or a combination of. And raising kids that are neurodistinct, it takes a very different type
Yeah.
of parenting style. And unfortunately, there isn't a lot of support out there for the parents. There's a lot for the kids, but it's very challenging, and parents are overwhelmed
Mhm.
and kids are overwhelmed. And so when I'm working with the family, I meet them where they're at, find out what's going on, because every family is so different.
Yeah.
This type of work, it's not cookie cutter work, right? So it's whatever, is the challenge with the family is what I take on, and we work together.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for being here. I really think it's important to start by getting to know you a little further. So, before we dive into all the services that you offer and how you're helping individuals, groups, family members as well, let's find out a little bit about you, if you don't mind. Where did you grow up, and how did you end up in this field? Tell us a little about your other life too. Thank
My
you.
other life, well, it's also very part and parcel. Like
Yeah.
I was born in Toronto. I'm a 67 baby, so a centennial baby, and I grew up in a family in the entertainment industry and music theater. So I grew up with a lot of, people around me, surrounded by creative, and our family didn't really fit into that box to begin with. So, um, but then I I just, I have always been interested in science, neuroscience, the physiology behind it. I've
Hmm.
always worked in healthcare,
Okay.
and I was a registered massage therapist for over 23 years. I always knew I wanted to work with people and help with people. And it's just this whole, you know, we're not separated. Um, you know, we're so used to being siloed in our life. Like, this is my job, this is my
Hmm.
family, this is my work. But for me, it's all part and parcel. I have ADHD, I have undiagnosed autism, just because I haven't gone through the process, but I identify my kids are. And so it's always been a bit of a challenge for myself. Um, going through school, but I was an athlete, and I just, I do I do what I do. I love animals, I love
Hmm.
people, and it's hard. I don't Everything is so blended in my life. I don't have really a night and day work life difference, if that makes any sense. The I walk the talk. If I'm working as a massage therapist and I'm working in healthcare and health promotion, that's what I'm doing. And now I'm doing this, and I can't remove myself from um, what I do,
Yeah.
because it's also who I am and who my family is. If that makes any sense
It does
whatsoever.
make sense. Wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow. All right, what else? My goodness. So you went to school to work in healthcare? Could you share a little bit
Yes.
about that? Okay.
Yeah. Um, I when I studied health sciences, And when I graduated from university, I knew what I wanted to do, but I couldn't find it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, through you know, um, a car accident that I was involved in, I was hit from behind. I discovered massage therapy, but the therapeutic part of massage therapy, not the spa and bonbons and
Yeah.
ladies who lunch. And so I was like, oh, the lights went off. And I was, doing a lot of work with athletes, professional, amateur. But I ended up, my practice started, a lot of it started um, moving into working with families and families who had special needs. So that became part of my massage therapy practice as well. And then once I became a parent and saw what was going on with my kids, it just became more important to work with families that were experiencing something that didn't fit into the regular, the box healthcare wise. So that's what I did. And I am a neuroscience geek. It's right up my alley, how, like, why our body works, but also, how our brain works and why.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have post grad studies in that. And here I am
Wow. What
doing what I do
could you tell
now.
me about your family? How old are your kids?
Yeah. Oh, my kids. My son is 16. He is autistic and has multiple diagnoses, ADHD and learning differences and working memory and sensory processing challenges. And he loves Dungeons and Dragons. He loves
Mm-hmm.
gaming. His sense of humor is amazing. And he keeps me on my toes. And then I have a daughter, Piper, who she'll be 14 at the end of this year. And she is so creative. Her art blows my mind. She is also autistic as well, has ADHD, has severe dyslexia, and other learning differences as well. And so, and that those are my kids. And I have my husband, who is, I call him my favorite husband because he's my second
Aw.
and the one I bred with. And he's amazing and so supportive. And I'm sure being married to me and having our kids is not a walk in the park, but we totally make it work. And I'm so thankful for him because he is just such an amazing guy. And he is, he's also a cornerstone in our family too.
Beautiful.
So
Well,
yeah.
let's now dive into a little bit about what you're doing and let's talk more about the families and children you're
Sure.
helping. Clearly, you can empathize with people going through this because your personal experience with yourself, with your son, with your daughter, with your family. So, we appreciate you being here and being so compassionate, and
Thank you.
that totally makes you unique. A lot of people who are in the field sometimes don't have that personal relationship with it to
Hmm.
understand neurodiversity in a sense. So I'm excited to have you here. Glad to get to know you. And again, it's Coach Alex Leech. If you're out there, go to Alex Leech, LEECH.ca. Let's talk about the profound lack of support parents to effectively parent neurodiverse type children, teens, tweens,
Hmm.
young adults. I know you want to kind of share that and how parenting doesn't really fit into all the same guidelines to start, right?
Hmm. So, you know, when, when we are when we're expecting our kids, we've all read the books.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's certain things that one looks out for. And, but, no one expects their child to come out, and be born with autism
Mm-hmm.
or ADHD or any other, neurodiverse diagnoses. And the parenting books, a lot of them are like, here are your ages and stages.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, in these books, they're very helpful, but it also breeds a lot of fear, anxiety, because what happens if your children aren't meeting those markers
Mm-hmm.
when they say that they should be. And when you also too, when you have your peers and you have, that have children, the same age of yours, like if you go into a play center and, for example, my son couldn't sit still on carpet time.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was too noisy. And you end up, when you're raising a child that is, in parentheses, different, there's also an isolation that comes with that. It's very difficult to connect with other parents.
Mm-hmm.
Your children aren't always connecting with other peers, and it can
Yeah.
become very isolating. And then when by the time they get into school, like elementary, primary, the JK, SK, um, a lot of emphasis happens on the child, where it's like
Yeah.
your child isn't working hard enough or doesn't sit still or there's something wrong. And there's a stigma that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think any parent dreads that parent teacher interview, but especially when you're a parent that has a neurodistinct child, you're sitting there and you're hearing about all the things that are going wrong with your child. And you're like, it's not wrong, it's just it's very different.
Different. Yep.
And there's not a lot of accommodations. There's funding shortages and cuts, and there's 28 to 30 other kids in the classroom, and it's very it became very overwhelming for parents. And some parents are, how do you put it, there's either a shame or a stigma that comes that their child is different,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so some parents keep it to themselves and it's at home and they're like, yes, that's happening at school, but others are really advocating for their kids and trying to get the supports for their children. But the school systems, and it doesn't matter where you live, they're all the same, are really struggling. So what do these parents do? And a lot of doctors, they're like, well, we think you have this or your child has this, whether it's autism,
Yeah.
ADHD, um, but there's almost a 2-year wait list to be assessed. So what do these parents
Wow.
do?
Yeah.
Everybody's overwhelmed. The children aren't happy. Parents aren't happy. So what I do is I come in and, I talk with the parents, what's going on. And some of it is in the consulting, part of my business, where I help connect them with with local educational consultants.
Yeah.
Where can they get their children assessed? Helping them with conversations to have with their doctors or pediatricians, helping them to have conversations with um, family members, right? And also too, managing that. And if you have a child that has been assessed, the assessment report is so large. How do you decode all that information? And then at the end of it, there's, pages in small fine print that are all these resources, but they
Yeah.
don't necessarily pertain exactly to their child. So how do disseminate this report? How do you find out? So I work with a lot of parents that have younger children with that and helping finding resources. But in the coaching part of it is also the
Wow.
our children learn most by not what we say, but what we do,
Oh, so true. I have a
right?
6 and 8-year-old. I have two little boys myself. So, monkey see, monkey do. You
You
have to
do.
remember. I'm wondering why my son is 6 and everything is going, oh, what? He's doing this lately. And I stopped and I said, oh, Jill, you're the one who gets the anxiety and goes, oh, because now he's
Yeah.
6 and he's doing this. And I'm like, oh, it's so funny and cute. But wait, no, that's me. Oh, my goodness. I overreact. And now I pass it to him. How do you undo that?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, and a lot of it too, right? Especially when you're raising a child that has, certain challenges. The way that our system is set up, yes, there are supports out there, and that's great, but a lot of the onus is on the child,
Yeah.
right? But what we forget is that, for example, we send our kids to like social skills class, right? Group class, but and or emotional management and
Mm-hmm.
regulation, right? But we parents at home are losing it. We're yelling or we're frustrated. And so we're telling our kids that they have to manage their emotions, but the parents
Yep.
are dysregulated themselves, understandably. So part of the coaching, especially when I work with a family, or say a parent comes to me and says, I'd like you to work with our king or queen. I said, that's great. But I also work with the parents because no one is alone. No one's an island,
Mm,
right? And these kids are doing the best that they
true.
can all the time. No child wants to, enjoys melting down and being dysregulated. And then also, who's triggering who? That's the big question. That's what we find out. And a lot of it from parents comes from we love our kids, we're supporting our kids. But sometimes we don't realize that through all our love and support, what is that flip side of that message?
Yeah.
We're coming from love, but that flip side sometimes is like something's wrong. I'm not, I'm different. I need to be fixed,
Mm-hmm.
not in those exact words, but there's a lot of that. I call it the compare and despair cycle,
Okay.
right? Sometimes we're like, oh, you're 16, you should be doing this.
Yes.
You shouldn't be, or shouldn't be doing that.
That's
But
who. But
we have to
yeah.
remember as parents, they don't have iOS operating system updates that suddenly at the age of 16 they get a download and they can do everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of it is we talk about, where their child is at and how do we work together to understand what this means for their child and their family. Like we have the, sibling dynamic, parent child dynamic,
Yeah.
family dynamic. So there's so much that is happening. It's not as simple as I'm setting my kids out for resources.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, at this time of the show, we got to just take a quick commercial break.
Yes.
No, it's going to be super quick. We're going to go right to tell us your website and information.
It's www.alexleech.ca is Alex Leech Consulting,
Perfect.
and where we understand, nurture, and empower.
Great. And on social media, can we find you anywhere as well?
Yes, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. You can find me at Alex Leech Consulting or alexleech.ca.
Perfect. I know you also want to talk about a lot of these big strides that have been made, and especially to prepare those in the workforce. I have a nephew who's 15. He's in
Mhm,
a very special class. He's highly autistic, but he's functioning, and he's opted out of the GED the program. They realized he cannot get a regular diploma, which was disappointing to my sister,
mhm,
understandably. But then now he's in like a work uh, program. So he was just at
mhm.
Applebee's last week. Do you have Applebee's where you are?
No,
Applebee's
but we have
or
enough American TV to know what
TGIF, the little
Applebee's is.
chain
Yes.
restaurant. So they're working
Mhm,
for a career. Then they worked at Wendy's one day. So they're working their hands-on skills to learn a career. So what would you say
mhm.
about giving those people options and that those tools who are neurodiverse to be working in this force? I mean, because it's beautiful, and I love how we're seeing a lot of that out in the field.
I think that is so important. Um, our kids, especially high school kids, there's so much pressure on them to decide what they want to do. And a lot of jobs out there aren't necessarily
Uh-huh.
accommodating. Let's put it politely. And I'm not going to, we have such limited time here. The stats are horrific when you look at the neurotypical versus, neuro distinct, rates of holding on to jobs. But any opportunity for kids and young adults to do volunteer work or to
Mm-hmm.
be in like an apprentice program or a work program, like you were explaining, is fantastic. Because let me tell you, I didn't know what I wanted to do at 16, 17, or 18,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how are we now? There's such pressure that you have to know what you want to do by like grade 9 or 10, right? There's so
Such
much pressure.
pressure. Yeah.
And I think whether your child is neurodistinct or neurotypical, I think it's an amazing opportunity. We have these programs, they're called, it's like a double credit where in high school, especially for grade 11 and 12, the last 2 years, you can take a college course and you get a credit for the high school course. But if you go into that program, you end up getting a credit towards that college degree and you get to try. For example, I have a
Very
client
true.
whose daughter is really interested in food services, right? So she's joined up for this and she goes to
Yep.
college, to a college class once a week in this program to find out if she really likes it or not. She's going to get a high school credit towards it. And if she decides to enroll in that program, she will actually get credit for doing this course. So that's what
Amazing.
we have here in Ontario.
Well, I was going to
So if
also
you can
ask,
find that, it's great.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you for some client experiences of the people, the children, the families that you've helped from this.
Mhm. Oh, it's the parents at first, they're like, I wasn't sure what to make out of this
Uh-huh.
because a lot of parents think it's going to be like, oh, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong,
Okay.
where it's not. And they come in and they either understand more, or they realize that sometimes it's just little tweaks in words, or even sometimes just
Yeah.
saying, I'm sorry, right? And the kids, when they feel like they're being heard and understood, and I especially bring in a lot of neuroscience into that to explain that this is how, the brain works, and this is why things are going,
Yeah.
and this is what to expect. So a lot of times, we hear that, oh, it's this way because, I'm wired a little differently. I'm not
Yeah.
wired wrong. And for them to identify with not just a diagnosis, but whether they even like just identify with a lot of the, um,
Yeah.
sort of all the check
Checks
marks,
the check. Exactly.
for
You
sort of
got it. You said it
diagnose.
right. Yeah.
Exactly. They're like, they don't feel so isolated and alone. And it is absolutely amazing. And it's an honor and privilege to work with these clients, these families, to see the change where they become happier and there's not as much yelling anymore. And it's all about, communication and expectation. And when they really internalize that, there's such a shift, a beautiful
Yeah.
shift that happens in the family. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Would you mind sharing the best form, all forms of contact again, and how we could reach out?
The best way to reach out is, my website is www.alexleech.ca.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would like to email me, my email is alex@alexleech.ca. And it is
Perfect.
Leech, like the bloodsucker.
I love it.
Hey, yeah,
Like the bloodsucker. Oh, that's a
like the
good one.
bloodsucker.
I
Yeah.
get it. Well, thank you so much for being here, for joining us, and looking forward to the next time we get to connect. Thank you again, Coach Alex. You have a fantastic day, okay?
Oh, thank you so much, Jill. And
Thank
you
you.
too.
Pleasure getting to know you. Looking forward to the next time we speak. Thank you so much.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcasts on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.